Alright, so we're going to do a video on spaying and neutering dogs, and there's actually quite a bit to this in terms of when you do this, why you do this, how you do this. So, for instance, we've got a little puppy here. She is 8.5 weeks old, and she's going for her vet check by a licensed veterinarian because it's part of the contract, which you should do anyway. 9.5 weeks old, okay. But I mean, you wouldn't spay a dog at this age. Well, some people might, but I mean they'd be nuts to. Okay, so let's have a look here. So your turn's coming up to me, right? Right. So first off, remember that when and how you decide to spay a dog, that's your choice. It's not your vet's choice. Your vet very likely will give you some opinions about how and when you should do that, and it's not like you shouldn't listen to your vet. You should. The point here is there are quite a few vets who have a personal agenda, which is to spay a dog whenever they possibly can, because they don't like the idea of us breeding dogs. So you're here in the Midwest, we really don't see that kind of attitude, but certainly do see it a lot more in places like California, Colorado. So just be aware of the fact that, you know, if you feel like you're being pressured to spaying a dog, then it's your decision. All right. So, but there are some good reasons to spay a dog. So let's talk about when it definitely does make sense. Well, first off, if you've got a female and your intention is to never have any more puppies, you're at the point where she's not going to have any more puppies because you've had problems. You never want to have any puppies in the first place. Then it makes absolute sense to spay the dog. When should you do that? Well, the general opinion is that you should let dogs have their first heat. Now, there's a lot of places that say you can spay a dog at 6 months, but the science that's coming out of this in the last few years shows it does make sense to let a dog have 1 or 2 heats, bigger dogs especially. It can help on things like hip dysplasia and joints development that don't happen as well if the dog doesn't have the sex hormones present. So I wouldn't spay a dog at 6 months. I would wait for a dog to be at least a year old, preferably it's had his first heat. Okay, so how do you spay the dog? Well, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either remove all of the reproductive organs, which is the typical way of doing this, or you can just remove the ovaries. And here in America, I think most vets are going to want to do a complete hysterectomy, remove everything, remove the uterus, remove the ovaries, the entire reproductive organ is going to be removed. It's a safe surgery, but it is a surgery that does have a certain mortality rate. It's in the order of something like, it's 1 in 1,000 because of anesthesia. It's less if the anesthesia is done properly. So I don't know what the mortality rate is for a spay, but I would guess it's something in the order of 1 in a couple of hundred. So it's not like you can't run into problems. And one of the temptations, of course, is that you made the decision. This is her last letter. She's fixing to go in for a C-section, and so the vet might say, well, we could do a spay, we can do a hysterectomy at the same time. And there's a financial advantage to that. So a single surgery is not going to cost you a lot more money. The dog doesn't have to be intubated and put under anesthesia twice. But there is a big burden on the dog that can result in the dog not looking after her puppies, rejecting puppies, and not producing milk. What do you think about that, Tammy? Would you do a spay and C-section? No, we would not do that. We have done that one time. I think we did that with the Chihuahua one time, didn't we?
Yep.
She ended up dying. That was a long time ago. We know better now. So
that was Chanel's dog.
Yes. So I definitely would not advise. I would advise, it's a big burden on a dog, and you're likely to run into problems. It's not guaranteed you can run into problems, but it is a significant possibility. So I would wait. So then the question is, if you had a litter of puppies and you are going to do a spay, when should you do it? Well, after she's weaned all of her puppies and she's got back to a regular weight before she goes to the next heat cycle. So it's going to be after she's had a C-section and you're waiting to do the spay, 3 months. something like that. It's at least a couple of months, we recommend. You've got 6 months probably before she comes back in again. Well, from a C-section, 4 months. So something in that order. This is your right turn, come over.
Yeah, no. Oh, it's an ambulance. No, it's a Spay.
Spay. Yeah, so where are we here? All right, so the next question is, what can you expect to be charged for a C-section by itself? And I think the going rate for a C-section is something between $200 and $600. There are some places that will do C-sections quite a bit less expensive. PetSmart, by the way, is one that offers this, and I don't know anything about whether I'd want to even use the people at PetSmart are going to recommend, but they do offer reduced rates because they want to see dogs spayed. So, you know, that may be something one can take advantage of. But I mean, do your homework and find out whether or not you feel like this is a person who does a lot of these and they do a good job. So, what are the advantages of having a spay done? Well, the dog's not going to get pregnant again. You don't have to have any unwanted pregnancies. You completely get rid of, if you do a complete spay, you completely get rid of the possibilities of having ovarian or uterine cancer. And it reduces other kinds of cancers too, like breast cancers. It stops things like cysts. You know, you can have problems with cysts on uterus, because that all goes away completely. What are the downsides of having a spay? Well, there's an expense, there's a small risk of having the surgery done, and there is a change in libido that can result in a dog putting weight on. You can control that, but you quite possibly might see a bit of a weight gain in the dog. Okay. At what point should you definitely do a spay? You know, you've got a dog that's 6, 7, 8 years old. Should you do a spay on that dog? I don't know. Those dogs are likely to have the equivalent of menopause and not be at risk anyway. So I honestly don't know whether there's a big advantage at that point to reduce things like cancers or not. So I'm not up to speed on that to be able to answer that question. All right. What's a recovery period? How long will it take a dog to recover from having a C-section? Well, you don't want to have any significant activity for the first couple of weeks. So something between 10 days and 2 weeks is normal recovery time. Sometimes you put an Elizabethan collar on the dog, a big collar that goes around the dog's neck so they can't lick and scratch on incisions. Okay. What do you have to do for the procedure beforehand? Well, no food, 12 hours, the night beforehand, no more food, no water after midnight prior to the day of the operations, because you're going to go under anesthesia and you take a left. And you don't.
No.
Yeah, what are they doing?
The road, yeah.
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're crazy, isn't it? On a blind road like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, got my notes here. What else I put down here? So after it's been done, what have you got to watch for? Incisions, infection at the incision, or a general infection on the inside. So if you keep looking at the incision wound every day, clean it as to the way that the doctor tells you. It's likely the doctor might give you antibiotics and also might give you some pain meds. And I think pain meds are in order. It's not like it's going to be nursing puppies and you want the dog to be alert. So I would want to have some pain meds for my dog. Certainly if it was being done to me, I'd want to have some pain meds. If you're in doubt as to what's going on, you're worried about your dog, take the dog's temperature. Temperatures of 102 or higher, definitely time to go back to the vet. It's likely that you've got some kind of an infection going on. At that point, the dog's going to do a blood test, check for white blood cells, high white blood count, and potentially probably give antibiotics. Okay, so that's the female side of it. Now let's talk about the male side of this. Oh, by the way, one last thing is because there is another reason that you're going to do a spay right away, is that you've got a dog that got pregnant and you don't want to have puppies. So one way that you can stop that is to do a C-section. So if you've decided that this is the end of your girl having puppies, she's pregnant, and you don't want to have those puppies, it's an unwanted pregnancy, do a C-section. It's a good time for them. Okay, males.
They can get fixed sooner.
They can get fixed sooner, yes. So why would you spay a male? Well, one of the things that happens with intact males is they tend to roam. And they have a short, by the way, both females and males have a shorter lifespan when they haven't been spayed. Some of this in males is definitely due to the fact that they want to roam and they get hit by cars. So I don't know if you take that out of the equation, what happens to their life expectancy, but supposedly it's up about 10 or 15%. So if you've got a dog that's going to live 15 years, it potentially could put a couple of years on its life. So what happens when you do a spay on a male dog? Well, you stop the testosterone hormone. That does affect things like the size of the dog, so dogs don't get as big. You do change the behavior of the dog, so dogs don't do the roaming, probably less likely to be doing the humping. And by the way, one thing I didn't say about the females, of course, one thing that you avoid when you do a C-section is you avoid all the mess. You know, that in season, a couple of weeks of bleeding and dropping blood on the ground goes away. Of course, males don't have seasons, they're just ready to go all the time. So when you spay them, you reduce their tendency to want to wander. You completely eradicate things like testicular cancer. But again, the recommendation is that you do wait till the dog's a year old if you can, because some of these sex-driven hormones affect things like joint development. So I wouldn't spay a dog at 6 months personally. Now, there are some circumstances where you're absolutely going to spay a dog. A dog that has a single testy should be spayed. The retained testicle is likely to get cancerous, and so removing both testes overcomes that problem completely. And a single testy dog shouldn't really be used as a stud anyway because there's no hereditary component to it. So you should spay those dogs. Of course, sometimes you will get a dog from a breeder who requires that you spay the dog and they want to show proof of it, which is entirely their right. But you want to find out about those things before you enter into a contract, because you may have other opinions about that. And you know, you may be in a situation that if you don't spay the dog, you don't have rights to breed the dog. All right, what else we got here? So what's the cost on spaying a boy? Less than spaying a girl. It's a much shorter surgery. So I don't know if they just use propofol for the surgery. They might, but I would think you're in the $100 to $200 range. It could be more in some places, but I would think that's probably the going rate. What do you know anything about that, Tammy?
Do what?
Having a spay, a neuter done on a male, what the cost is?
Oh, no, I
No?
don't.
Right. Okay.
My guess would be 200 to 400.
Yeah, that's actually I broke 100 to 400 down. I've already looked at it, so yeah. Okay. Yeah, and look. So the other thing is here is if you buy a dog from a pet shelter, they will spay the dog.
But they charge you for it too.
And they charge you for it, but that's typically all you get. You know, if you want to take in a dog that's you know, unwanted by somebody else or as a stray dog, which is probably a great thing to do.
Usually that's automatic when you adopt one like that.
Yeah, you adopt one like that, they're going to want you to pay for a spay. And normally they've got a relationship with a doctor, a vet close by, and it's not very expensive. But that will be the biggest expense of getting a dog that's from a pound. Will be that they're going to require a vet checkup and a spay.
Well, if it's not already spayed, because normally they're already spayed.
Yes,
before they're
right.
adopted.
Yes, but there's another thing too. If you've got a busy lifestyle and you go off to places and you leave your dog to be left alone in a doggy day place, most of those places require the dogs to spay. They don't want, especially males, they don't want to have intact males in their place. So most of those places are going to require that's the case. They are spayed, which is obviously a good idea. You would not want to take your dog to a doggy daycare centre and then your dog gets pregnant, right? Okay. That wraps it up. Bye. Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate people who subscribe to me. It helps me, encourage me to do more of these videos. But do remember, disclaimer here, I am not a vet. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I'm purely a person who's been breeding dogs for the last couple of decades. Any information that you got from this video, use at your own risk. There's nothing implied here, and certainly this should not be used as a substitute for advice from your veterinarian or your medical professional. I hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for more of them. Bye.